All right. So, Michael, at 10 minutes of introduction, we're going to boil down. We're going to boil down to just a couple of minutes.
Okay.
So, Michael was at the top there was explaining some of the nicknames of our player for today. So,
Yeah.
why don't you review that?
Sakata, he was a really sharp fighter, so he had all these nicknames that people would give him, and basically he was such a colorful. His games were so exciting that people would invent these nicknames. And my favorite is Razor Blade Sakata.
Razor Blade Sakata. I love that. That's just, you don't want to meet him in an alley.
Right. Yeah, definitely not. And like he was, so you find these brilliant moves in his games, and his reading was very deep, and it was very accurate in the middle game. And you might say his opening was not outstanding. He didn't actually try to get an advantage in the opening, so he was satisfied to play popular openings. He had a good understanding of the opening, which is something I'm going to show in this game, but he wasn't actually trying to outplay his opponent to the point of using a lot of time, which was basically using a lot of time in the opening was kind of a fad in Japan. It was a mark of the top Japanese players who would just enjoy that part so much that they would spend most of their time in the opening. I could name a few players, but let's leave it. But he was the opposite of that, and he played fairly quickly in the opening, which means that since a lot of the information in his games, a lot of the material that I get stuff out of is in the middle game, it makes it relevant to modern Go also. It makes it very useful for me.
You were saying before we got our sound back that he was in agreement with Go Sagan.
Go Sagan was always saying that Go was depended a lot on the balance. So you had to, people still have a tendency to get involved in local positions to a certain degree. The weaker you are, the more you have that potential to get just wrapped up in one part of the board. And so he would always tell us, even on the professional level, you can have that problem. So he was telling us to keep a good balance of the overall position. And he was always suggesting that we should give up something locally to take an overall lead. And so, and Sakata was like that to a certain degree, but he sort of changed gears when the fighting started.
Yeah, that sounds like modern Go as well. Just a reminder before we jump into the game, folks, we are live, which means that we're monitoring your chat. So if you have questions or comments, please go ahead and share them, and we will respond as we can. In fact, here's an interesting comment that Sakata apparently smoked like a chimney, which I think was probably, this game I think you told me was from 1950, is that right?
Maybe 1951.
1951.
Sakata smoked? Yeah, he was a big smoker.
A lot of the players back then probably did that, right? I mean, I've seen photos.
Yeah. Even when I was a young player, so that was more like in the 80s. It was people were still smoking a lot, and I think at Sakata's time, people just didn't know it was bad for you and stuff like that, and it was very popular. He smoked a lot.
I remember when I visited Japan, we would go to these little clubs in these small towns
filled with smoke, right?
Oh my God. I mean, and I'm a non-smoker, and it was, I mean, I would just go ahead because I really wanted to play, but boy, I would just come out and it was just, I felt like I'd been smoking. It was so thick. I think there was one club in Tokyo that was a non-smoking club. It was very unusual. So anyway, good comment, folks. Keep them coming. And let's just jump right into it.
Start the game. I should say that Hosokawa, Sakata's opponent in this game, it was the Haidan's tournament in the top ranked players tournament for the Japanese Go Association. And the name of this tournament actually it changed a few times, and it sort of morphosized into one of the modern tournaments. I think it was the Gosei. Maybe someone could correct me on that, but I'm thinking it was the Gosei tournament that it eventually changed into. They changed the name a few times.
Oh, you were saying when we were talking before the show that remind folks of what was going on.
At the time. Well, it was a time when after the World War II, after World War II, Go had been revived. Actually, Sakata's opponent Hosokawa was one of the people who was very prominent in starting up the organizations again. But there came this time when the players in Osaka, which is in the west part of Japan, felt that they were not being treated equally to the players in Tokyo, which was the center of Go. And so they broke off and formed the Kansai Kin, which still exists. It still has some of the top players, like Yuki, for instance. Yuki Satoshi is one of the top players in Kansai Kin. There's a number of very strong players in the Kansai Kin, actually. But at the time, the strongest player was Hashimoto Utaro, a famous player in his own. And he took the Hoinbo tournament and he went to the Kansai Kin because that was... and so the Kansai Kin had the Hoinbo tournament, which was the most important at the time. And Sakata was representing the Nihon Kin, the Tokyo part of the Tokyo organization. And people were expecting that Sakata would take the Hoinbo away from Hashimoto. And at the time of this game, he was leading the title match 3-1. It was a best of 7. And so he was just one more game away, taking the Hoinbo. And that was going to be his first title, maybe. But he took this one first, and he actually lost the Hoinbo match, losing the last 3 games.
Oh, my goodness.
And yeah, well, he made some interesting comments about that, how it was kind of a psychological thing where he just got too tight because he was winning 3-1. And so he put that down to be not mature enough, is what Sakata said about himself. And then several years after that, he started taking the Hoinbo tournament. But there was a space there. And this became his first title match, first title to capture. This was the high-ranked players tournament. And his opponent, Hosokawa, is also a member of the Kansai Kin. I think he's one of the founding members. Cool. He was well known for his prominence in Ko's. So he was the Hosokawa of the Ko's. For some reason. Well, maybe we'll find out something about that in this game.
All right. Well, folks are looking for Ko's. You're going to get Ko's. So buckle in.
And Hosokawa's most famous quote is, Go is all about cutting. Yeah. So he's a kind of an aggressive type of player.
But wait a minute. He's playing the razor blade.
He's playing the razor. They're both cutting, right? And so white plays a pincer. Black plays the 2-space jump. It's not so popular now when everyone is pressing, right? But it is still a move that people play. So if black presses, like this would be more like what you would expect in a modern game. But people do jump. This was played against me just a few weeks ago when I played Oh Man. We did that one too, I think. Yeah, so people still jump here. And white jumps and black plays the low pincer. And white plays a shimari. This is all fairly even. It's not what the computer would do, like the computer would play here. And it gets really complicated. I don't think we need to go into that. Like, there's no way players would be doing that 70 years ago. They didn't have AIs back then.
Of course not.
Yeah. They didn't have computers, house computers, I think. Okay, so this is an interesting move. It's sort of exciting with that hole open there. But if black plays here, white's probably planning to play this one and sort of connecting like this. So the ladder favors white. So if black tries something like this, black will quickly run out of liberties. And there's always this weak point on this side. So it's not really working for black. So I think that's the idea that white had. And black played here. This was actually a common joseki at the time. But this is like just generally in this position. This was, again, I'm going to make a comparison to Go Seigen because Go Seigen really liked to take the corner as white is doing here. Whereas before this, just up to this time, and at the time of this game, it was still true that a lot of people thought it was better for white to pull back here and would allow black to get this shape. This was the more common, the common knowledge was that this was okay for white, and white would probably try to be closing black in here with something like this, with the squeeze, something like this. an example of what white would be thinking of playing. But Goseigen was very strong in saying that this is the good move. And you will see if you look at Goseigen's games that in all of the best of 10 matches and so on, he's pretty much playing this a number of times. And his opponents aren't expecting it. And Goseigen is winning a lot with this strategy. So very Goseigen basically changed this. And we see in Sakata's games at this time in his career, he very quickly adapted that, and he agreed basically with Goseigen. And in many ways, he agreed with Goseigen a lot. And I think that's part of his success was partly because of that, because he was so quick to see the truth in what Goseigen was saying. And like I was getting this information from Goseigen, and this it was last 2 decades, I guess, when I was going to Goseigen's study group. But this was 5 decades before that, so it's even then Goseigen was already saying similar stuff to what he was teaching me, and it was still difficult for even professionals to digest completely, because it was a lot of what Goseigen was teaching us it sort of disagreed with what a lot of people thought.
Which was a big deal at the time. I mean, this was really a game of received wisdom.
Right, yeah. Well, especially because in Japan, the golden age was like, it was something from like 300 or 400 years ago to, 100, 200 years ago. There was this golden age where professional Go players basically could spend all of their time studying Go, and they were sponsored by the government. And so they were playing at a very, very high level. And they had all this Go theory that they had invented because they had so much time to concentrate on that.
Sure.
And it's very high quality, and it's sort of dominated the values of professional players in modern times also, until we had AIs, when that changed everything.
Right.
So in this position, it looks pretty good for white. White is alive in the corner, and white is sort of attacking that black group, and will be hoping to get some territory on the upper side. So white will be making territory here, and in the center of the board, white has a rather thin position, but will be satisfied just to have that holding together. So this is probably already pretty good for white. The Komi, I think, is just 4.5 points.
Did you look at it with an AI just to apply that? I'm curious about what a modern AI would say.
Actually, if you look at an AI, most of the game, the AI will say that Sakata has a lead. After this, already white is sort of attacking here, and it's a good flow of stones, but it gets so complicated that a human player would not be so sure about that. Like it gets really, really exciting. So here black is moving out, and white has to continue attacking like this, because this white group is actually very, very thin. So white's trying to make a little space there for that white group. It's a good example of how white still has this weak point here. So white has to be able to sort of dodge around when black does that and handle it somehow. It looks like white should be okay. So black plays here. He's asking for a fight. Like, I think most players nowadays would be playing a more solid move like this, and just reinforcing that black group on the left by making a solid position in the upper right. This would be the move that I would advise to a weaker player. And although white has a nice flow of stones here, there's still opportunities for, like, for instance, black could play something towards the center here. And with solid positions on both sides, black would have some opportunities to attack white in the center of the board. And also black does have this area in the lower left that could become a fairly a decent territory there. So black's not losing yet. It's still, although the computer would give white a good score, the game is actually pretty close if you look at it. So black plays here. He's ready to start a fight. So white could have played here. And this is the way I would play. And then, of course, this is the computer-generated variation when white plays the attachment here. So this would be, and people just didn't play this move until we had computer programs telling us to. Like there are a few, maybe a few games where it happened. But there were special cases, like it could be a co-threat or something like that, or a ladder breaking move.
But it wouldn't have been an opening move. I mean, this would have just been unthinkable, right? I think you probably can't find hardly any straight up opening moves like this, right? This would
Right,
be
yeah. And like now the computer programs will be suggesting this move shortly after the Shimari, the corner enclosure, is played. So in the first 10
right,
moves of the game.
right.
So that's a big difference in the way we looked at that move. And if you just look at the record of games, you will see this move played as a ladder breaking move or a co-threat.
Sure, sure.
Even in the middle game, it's pretty rare to see this move played as an attack on black's position. And so white plays here. This is typical Sakata. He's just splitting the side, and I really liked this move. This is a very the taste of this move is very much like Sakata, if you ask me. He doesn't. There's no reason he really has to play this move. For instance, white could have just played the extension on the side, and that would have been arguably this is the better move. Maybe it's the better move. It would be a very natural move. When he plays here, he's putting a question to black. How is black going to protect against the cut here? And if black answers this way, black is threatening the cut at 017, right, and white gets to protect this way. So basically, adding this stone at 2 is a valuable move for white because it strengthens white's upper territory, and it creates a base to break through here and start attacking black on the left. So white really has an advantage in getting that stone at 2. And black's stone at 1 here, connecting on the 4th line, it is kind of a kludgy move. It's not making 2 eyes for black. So in order to start to make eyes there, black would have to add another move here. And that connection at 1 there's potential that it will sort of become a wasted move. But of course, if black plays something like this, then white doesn't have to protect the upper side, and white could play this way. And this exchange is going to be good for white. And so it's a very annoying move. And I think Sakata had a knack of finding these annoying moves. So black cuts here. I would probably cut there. It's very annoying not to cut here. The idea, of course, is that if white plays like this, obviously black gets all these forcing moves. This would be better than the previous diagram. Black would be able to play a pincer here. This would just be that black not only got this forcing move, but also got this one. It gives black a better position towards the center. So that's black's idea. Obviously, white is not going to allow that. And that's how Sakata sort of drags his opponent into these complicated fights, just by sort of provoking them. And he has it all. There's a lot of reading that he has put into this. And so once this fight starts, he's suddenly very deeply and correctly reading the fight out, because it gets really, really exciting. Black extends here, and white covers on top. So far, this is forced. And white has 4 liberties, and it's going to be difficult for black to fill them all. So it's sort of closer to 5 liberties. Black only has 3 liberties so far. So in order to get a squeeze, black really needs to play this jump. Jumping here does not make a living shape yet. So if white had played here, then black could play here. And you can see in this race to capture, white's going to win by 1 move. But for instance, if we assume something like this, you can see that black is getting a lot of forcing moves out of that. So this would be a good way for black to sacrifice those stones on the top, just getting all this these extra moves that black is getting while squeezing white. So that's kind of the idea that black has here. And white's not going to let that happen. White plays the Hana here. Once white makes an eye there, the quality of black's squeeze is going to go down if black answers that. So black doesn't really have time. For instance, if black connects here, white's just going to play, maybe white's going to play it this way. And it's an eye, and black does not have an eye. So it's just not going to work for black. Black doesn't get much mileage out of this. So black jumps. So what's happening here? What do you think's happening?
I mean, it looks like black is starting to get some, potential eye space there.
Looks like black has an eye on the upper side, right?
Does, and then so I don't know what the liberty count is now. It's very complicated.
Okay. It depends how black fills the liberty. So like if black, um, let's just add a few moves. White continued here. So this is fixing white's position on that side and starting to attack black on the top. So if black plays here and starts filling liberties, that's, let's count the liberties at this point. That's one move. And it all depends on how black starts to play the corner. Like if black plays here, it's 2, 3, 4, 5 moves with a ko. And that's definitely not going to be enough to win the semi. If it takes black's 5 moves to get there, that black group on the side, it only has something like, for instance, white could play here. Black only has 3 moves left, these 3 moves. And that's a ko too. So whatever happens, it's going to be some kind of a ko. But when black does play the ko, black's probably going to throw in here. So it's a position where there's a ko on the right in the corner, and there's a ko on the left. And both players are not going to connect these kos. Connecting the ko doesn't do anything. And black just plays away. Black still has to worry about the cut here, but white's going to be a bit hesitant now to play that. Because if white pushes through and cuts, then it will accelerate, let's say. Well, even if black plays the ko immediately, it's going to accelerate that ko. It's going to, by filling this liberty here at 1, white has made the ko one step closer. So it's a dangerous thing for white to do. So white's going to hesitate to push through and cut there. But it is sort of an issue. Just to go into one other variation for black could have played here and made 2 eyes. And that will just be a ko situation here. But when black does lose that ko, the cut here becomes a bit more dangerous. So that's why black was not making that ko. That's one of the reasons black did not immediately make that ko to live on the upper side. The other reason is that there's going to be a ko. Can you believe there's going to be a ko to connect up to this group?
Oh yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah, you can believe that, right? Because at some point black can play a forcing move here against the corner.
Yep.
And get a ko here. Yeah.
Yep.
So there's that ko. This is another ko that black is not ready. Yes?
How many kos are we at now? 3, 4?
None of them have happened yet.
Right.
None of them have happened. I'm going to count them as they happen.
Okay, all right. Nice.
You might note that I didn't count that one even. That was a potential ko there. It didn't happen. So we're back in the game. So black jumps here. Black's going to leave it for the time being. And white starts that. So we can say this is ko number 1. White started the ko. And so if white can finish this ko, it's going to be like if white gets to play this point and take that black stone, it's going to be completely settled. Like this is a position where if black plays here, white can afford to connect even, and it's a finished ko. That means that the cut here is going to be a real threat next. So winning this ko is pretty significant. It would fix all white's problems and create this weakness in black's connection. So basically playing this point would force black to protect the mark point. So it's a huge value there. It's not only protecting white, it is going to be sente. So black has to fight this ko for the time being. So black plays a ko threat. And you can see that while provoking that ko threat, white has got a nice shape on the outside here with the bamboo joint. And white just leaves the upper side. So the upper side, as I was saying, it's still not so close. Like if black plays here, white still, if we count the quick way, 1, 2, 3, 4, with blacks immediately starting the ko in the corner, that's still four moves to win the ko. And if white plays, so when black plays here, if white plays something like this, you can see that black has only 2 moves left. So this ko will come first, this ko at K18. even while they're fighting the ko on this side, white can start with this ko at k18. And so black has to basically win that ko and then capture this stone, win that ko, and then finally capture here. So it takes black 3 more moves.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of work black has to do to win that ko.
Wow.
And black's not going to try it yet. Black's going to wait for the right time. Because as I was saying, black has this other ko that black might want to play. And black wants to leave all these possibilities open.
But can I just ask? I mean, wouldn't Black's life have been a lot easier if he had just, come up with some simpler way to deal with that cut?
This player doesn't like to play simply. The reason I chose this game is that he's so similar to Sakata in the way he likes to mix things up.
Right.
Yeah. It made a pretty spectacular game.
Yeah.
So at this point, black is putting a lot of pressure on white on the right side, and looking for a way to create ko threats for that ko in the upper right. Black really wants to throw in here at some point. So this is the ko that would be best for black to win, but he's also leaving the potential of playing that move at f18 and making that ko on the first line also. And it's not as if white's completely safe, because you have to remember this white group on the outside is not alive either.
Mm-hmm.
So if black can manufacture the ko threats for winning that ko, it could become pretty dangerous. So he's centered on that. So he's enclosing white on the right side. And this looks like it's one of my life and death problems. Actually, it's not alive really. It's gonna the status of this group on the right. It's going to change from alive to dead, maybe, and then it's going to be alive again. It doesn't really matter. It's sort of an example of how humans can be like computer programs sometimes, because it's like Karago, not worrying about whether it's alive or not.
The zombie group. Mm-hmm.
Very much. That's something I like about Sakata's games. Also, he's so much fighting going on. This is sort of typical of him. So white is going to try to fix that ko on the upper side. And you must remember, if white captures here at J19, that's going to create the potential cut at Q16. So there's a connection there. So it's a really important ko. Black still wants to continue this ko. Black doesn't want this ko to stop. So black's going to play a forceful ko threat. And white doesn't really have anything that can be called ko threats. Like, white does not want to fill any of these liberties. White doesn't want to do anything in this vicinity right now. It would be losing something. It would be counterproductive. And white doesn't want to do anything from this direction, because if black curls around here and surrounds that white group, white will have to deal with the potential cut here, and the whole group will not have eyes. So then white's life will depend on that ko that's happening on the upper side, and that will change it a lot. So white really wants to move from this group. White wants to move from this group. So let's see what he did. So he started with that. So now, since I started with that explanation of the ko, you know what Sakata is doing with this move. He's getting rid of the forcing move here for black. And so he's erased one of those kos. At the same time, he's taking away eye space from this black group. And so he's starting an attack there. Black plays here. This is threatening to kill white on the side. So if we had an ideal Tsumego-like life and death position, if it was a problem, then black would be able to make a ko here, or kill white, depending on. Black really needs another stone protecting this weak point that black has, because black is going to peep here at some point. So for instance, black could peep here and crawl here and cover. So this would be a dead shape. And white would eventually have this forcing move. And this is a dead shape. Locally, of course. But white does have, for the time being, white has this threat here of pushing through and cutting. So black has to, I put the wrong color somewhere. Sorry about that.
Yeah, because
So
it's
it's
not, I
like
was
this.
just going to ask you, something's missing.
Yeah. I should have. I meant to put a black stone. I was doing something weird there. And so this is a dead shape.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't using the move tool. I was just putting stones. So locally, it's a dead shape. But for the time being, black doesn't have that stone at the triangle point, the mark point, and so black cannot do that yet. So once black plays here, it's slowly becoming a potential that black will be able to kill this white group on the side. But Sakata is not going to defend that.
Wow. Okay.
Because he has this big attack on the left side. So white has played this move, which is a step towards taking away black's eye space. And now he has surrounded black from the center. But his opponent is Hosokawa of the Co's. And so he has a plan, I suppose. Plays here. Starting to make eyes. And white has to be careful of the connection here. So that what white is doing with, for instance, this move and this move, these two moves were necessary for white to stay connected in the center. This white started with a very loose connection all over, and it's still not really completely connected. So that's going to continue to be an issue for white. But white has to be very careful on how white attacks. A weaker player might be just going for the eyes, but he has to make his connection first. It's still a difficult position for black. Black bumps against here. I could keep you in suspense, but maybe I should just make a short explanation of what's happening here. Black has one eye here. Black has a potential eye here. And there's a huge bunch of aji in the center here where white is not properly connected. And also black has a ko on the left. Do you see the ko on the left?
Is it the F-18 or B? There's no I there.
There's no eye there? Doesn't look like an eye, does it?
No.
Black can actually play here and play the double hane.
Oh.
If
That's
the
cool.
white stone here. Oh, sorry, I can't do it as a move. Yeah, if there was a white stone here, for instance, if it was a slightly different shape, where maybe then white would be able to kill it with this move, like this. But since that stone does not exist, if white plays here, black will play here and is connected up, right? Nice. So when black plays there, white's best move is to cover, and so we have this go. So this is going to be it's a one-step ko. Black has to play another move before it's a real ko. So they'll fight the ko as it is, and then later black will cut here to make it a real ko. But as black fights this ko, you can see that black's territory will increase when black wins the ko. So it's a ko that black can play at some point later in the game. Or actually did play later in the game. So when black plays here, black has one eye. Black has a potential eye at the other mark point and has that ko on the left. But when white goes after that eye, in the game white played away like this, when white goes after this eye, white's going to fill the liberties of these three stones, which is not so good when black plays here. It's going to make trouble. White does have a kind of a situation here where white has a weak shape there in the center. And so it could develop into kind of a race to capture between this black group on the outside and the white group here. And so he's not going to go through with that yet. He's going to leave it for a while, and he switches back to this side. And you have to remember, on the right side of the board, for the time being, this white group is not really alive.
No, it is very. I can could kill it.
But when black peeps here at some point, there still is the cut when white pushes through here. So there's still this issue that black has to deal with.
Right.
And in that variation I was showing you, when black kills white with this sequence, you have to remember, sorry, not that one. You have to remember that this shape here is the 5-stone dead shape. That's a 5-stone nakade. That's 8 moves that white has there. Okay. So white has a lot of liberties in this fight. So if at any point this white can cut here, if the cut succeeds, then white is going to win just about any race to capture that you can imagine. White's going to win it. So black cannot attack quite yet. So back to the game. Black did play this one. And this is a position where if white were really worried about his life, maybe white could try something like this to make a ko or something. But white doesn't have to do that. White is just going to head towards that variation I was just showing you. So white plays here. Black can still kill it with this variation. So it's that same shape. It's dead. But white does have this cut here. I could also say that the tesuji is to play here. This is an example of how this is a famous problem. It's a famous life and death problem where white can sacrifice the 2 stones and get a living shape. So this way is not lethal.
That's clever.
Yeah. So this is actually a very famous shape where white can throw in that stone at 4 and sort of sacrifice that stone at 4. And black, it looks good for black because black gets that snapback, but actually white gets 2 eyes. Provided white has about 2 liberties on the outside. White needs some liberties on the outside. For instance, if black had all these filled, then black could now play here and kill the white group. If white was in lack of liberties and could not play the target here. But since white has all those liberties, it's okay in this case. So that's just something that pros know. It's hardwired.
Mm-hmm.
White cuts here. When white cuts here, white's going to lose these 3 stones. But he doesn't care. And this is almost like an AI, the way he doesn't care whether he loses them. Actually, if black had played here and played here, he would have captured those stones. And the point is that this is going to be a forcing move against white on the right. If white plays here, this is relatively easy for black to kill. And the point is, in this variation, white does not have very many moves. White doesn't have very many liberties, so it's going to be easy for black to capture this group.
Wow.
This is also, like, I did that maybe too quickly, but this is also a fairly well-known position where black, even if white gets the Atari there at some point, like you could reconstruct this problem and at some point say that maybe white got to play this. In this case, it's actually an interesting life and death problem, but black can still kill it. You want to try to kill this group? Just ignore the fact that black is cut off and treat it as a life and death problem.
Yeah.
Cutting here, like I was showing before, with that white stone at 6, it's not going to work because this is alive.
Yeah, no, that's a problem. I was just trying to see whether. Yeah, does maybe T13 is a way to start out?
Yeah, that's good. You're sharp today. T13 is the correct answer. And if white connects here, then white has no way to fill a liberty now.
Oh, that's so cool.
And wherever else white plays, like for instance this, then black can cut at T14 and kill it.
Wow.
Well, that's the correct answer. Well done. Let's go back to the game.
Yeah, we're done now. We're gonna stop counting now.
Yeah, you passed the test. So black plays here, white pushes through, and black connects. And again, it's the same story. If white plays on this side, black will be able to kill white on this side. And so white plays this side. Now white's alive. So he's come back to life on the right side.
Wow.
And if black escapes here, that's not good because he didn't fill this liberty. Like he played this move. You noticed in the previous variation, I was playing this move 1 space to the right to fill the liberty. Then black would be able to win. Since he pulled back, he had no intention to get into this variation in either case. He didn't want to take those 5 white stones because this would be, even if he had that black stone there and could win by 1 move, it would make it really black very hesitant to start this ko in the corner because black's whole group would then be in Atari. So he doesn't want to get into this variation anyway. But in the game variation, when it happens, black's just going to lose by one move.
Mm.
Later in the game, we're going to see Sakata sort of inviting black to fill his liberties like that because of the connection to this code that is waiting to happen in the corner. But I'll talk about that again when it happens. So black connects here. He's extending his liberties and sort of changing the quality of this ko here, in which case it's going to be a ko in which white will have trouble winning this ko also. So when black throws in at T19 with this black stone at S16, it's going to give black some extra flexibility in the ko there, because it's going to take time for white to win that ko also. So this move is actually, it's functioning towards the corner when black plays T19. It's also extending black's liberties. So if white, so if white answers here, killing the black group, it means that black will now be able to win. Unless white throws in here. White would be a bit hesitant to start this ko also, because throwing in here loses a move when you were sort of expecting black to throw in here. White would also be a bit hesitant to play this move.
Mm.
So in the game, white starts attacking the black group. And it turns out that this cut here, having these white stones, is going to change what happens in the center of the board. And we're going to see these two stones making a big difference almost immediately. For instance, when black cuts through, because white can squeeze from outside, and this is a snapback shape. So it's these two stones that white got in the process of that fight on the right. They're already making a big difference there in this fight in the center. They're completing white's connection. And of course, if black takes the one stone, that's not going to be good either. So there's this connection to what white was doing on the right side, which it wasn't really clear how it was functioning, but actually it had to do with this fight that's starting in the center.
Mm.
And now black is going to start that ko at this point now. So black has only one eye, but he has a lot of ko threats. Oh yeah, I already showed you about that one. Yeah. So he starts the ko. And white, okay, white's inviting black to capture these 4 stones. And this would happen as they fight the ko on the left. So white would be taking the ko, and black would be playing ko threats. And in the process, white would be filling the liberties of this black group. And you can see again that the fact that black has a shortage of liberties will make black very hesitant to start this ko in the corner.
Yeah.
And mostly white is just going to leave this. White's not going to start the ko either. It's just going to be a deterrent for black starting that ko at the T19 point. And also the fact that white has all these ko threats, like 2 to 12, that's already 6 ko threats that white had, or something like that. So black ignores white's threat here. And instead of taking the 4 stones with the mark point, black's just going to leave it. And in the end, black's going to have to rely on this ko in the corner to save that group. But for the time being, he's going to win the ko on the left. So he finishes that ko. And suddenly, you have to realize that this white group doesn't have eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if white just goes after that black group, like you might be tempted to do something like this and try to, that it doesn't really work, but you might try to finish off that ko. It's really difficult for white to finish it off in just one move. It doesn't work that way. But the fact that if black plays here, or maybe here, that white group on the left is pretty well surrounded. Like it's not gonna be possible for white to live. White has to be careful here, and you have to keep conscious of the whole board position.
Yeah.
Just killing black on the upper right, it would take a couple of moves, and it would not be decisive. So white plays here, just waiting for black to start that ko. White wants black to start the ko, and then white wants to win it. And that's going to be the decisive fight. Black's not ready to start the ko. But, he has all these areas where if he captures all of this, then it's not going to be bad for black. It's going to be a fairly close game if black can capture. Obviously, if black captures this white group on the left, that's going to be a win for black. Sure. If white captures this lower right corner, in many cases, that's going to be a win for black. Black has these potential trades. He's trying to set up an area where he can play a ko-threat and capture it. Okay, back to the game. So white, you can see this super conservative move in the lower right corner. It's just he's trying to reduce the number of, like if it was just a simple endgame with no ko to deal with, maybe white would be playing something more like this, or at least something like this. White, there's no problem with this except for the fact that it leaves some ko threats for black. So he's playing a super tight move here. And now this is a double threat. It's threatening if black plays here, white is threatening to cut black off here. So that's the threat behind that move. So black answers on this side. That makes his connection. He's also starting to make some ice space on the right. So that's gonna make a difference when white eventually does cut that black group off. So this way, black is setting up some ko threats by making a solid connection here. Black is finally ready to have some ko threats against that white group on the left. Black has a lot of ko threats against that group. So I think this is where he started the ko. Yeah, in the upper right. Black has enough ko threats to win that ko, but it's going to be some kind of a trade. And we don't know how the trade is going to turn out. This would be a completely confusing situation. And I think most players, although the computers are still saying that white is winning, I think most players would have a terribly hard time establishing that win.
Yeah, I'm definitely. I haven't even counted in a while. It just looks like a mess.
It's a mess. Black has enough ko threats to win the ko in this area on the left. That white group is not alive yet.
Right.
Now white plays here, and black ignores it. Locally, white is going to be playing ko threats here. If black answers, white's next ko threat will be here. And when white gets to play this stone, it creates a potential cut here, which will make this move forcing for white. So it's sort of connected to the fight on the left here, where white is going to have an eye on the side here because of the threatened cut. So black continues the ko. Now you can see that it's one more step towards winning the ko. Fortunately for white, this group is completely alive. So white has this one eye here, and we'll just ignore the potential connection here, which is going to disappear later. There's a potential eye here, and there's a potential connection here. So white's pretty safe with that group. It will take a number of moves before that group is in danger. And white plays here. So this is reinforcing white's group on the left here, because white does have that forcing move here, or in some cases white can just cut here. So that's going to be a problem for black. Actually, black answered that. So black's group on the right here is cut off. Not really dead yet, but it's cut off. How many kos do we have so far?
I think
I lost count.
I think it was somewhere.
I counted it when I studied the game. There was one ko in the upper side here, and I'd say we could call this whole area in the upper right just one ko, although it's a number of kos, but like they're related kos. So we'll call that upper right area one ko. They had a ko on the left. There's still a few kos coming up.
It's like five, maybe. Yeah.
Well, depends. It really depends how you count this ko.
Yeah.
But I think I called this game the game of 7 kos. When I called it 7 kos, I only counted this area as one ko.
Okay.
So like the way you counted it could be more than 10, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
because there's more codes to come.
Good, because I hadn't quite have enough codes yet.
Okay, black was in a position to finish off that ko in the upper right, that is. But he didn't want to give up this group outright. So he's going to start by making an eye there. And it's pretty difficult for white to kill this group. That's going to be the next ko. We'll see that happening.
Yeah, no, I was looking at that real quickly, trying to see, and I thought, geez, it looks very thin, but it's actually got some nice shape to it.
This game is a great example of these step kos, these stage three. It's a 3-stage ko or 4-stage ko or something like that, where the ko gradually gets better for white as white keeps taking, but it's not over yet. Like, it's still not over yet. And the fact that black has all of these great ko threats on the left here against this white group, it makes it really difficult for white to finish off this ko. And the same thing can be said when black starts taking the ko like this. How many, depending on how many moves black plays, even if black gets to this point, it's still not going to be completely over. So it's really exciting in this game to see the ko seesawing back and forth, but it's they both have significant ko threats throughout the board. It means that the ko is going back and forth to the verge of ending, but it takes a lot for them to actually finish it. So at this point, white is one move away from finishing the ko, but black starts using these ko threats on the left part of the board.
Wow.
So 2 moves in a row would just kill that white group. And now white connects here. Black's group on the right, it's still not going to be dead yet. So black takes the ko. Sort of dizzying, isn't it? Going back and forth. And white, if white had played, white could have tried to find a ko threat, but the fact that this white group is not completely alive, it would just give black a big advantage in the ko, and black would be attacking it while playing ko threats. So white started by adding a stone here, and now this group, pretty clear that it's alive now. It's pretty obviously alive.
Right.
So that's important move. And black is 1 move away from finishing the ko. Now it's time for white to go after this group. So this is going to be enough for white if white can capture this black group. White is alive on this side. White is alive in the center. And basically black's only big territory is this area on the left side.
Mm-hmm.
And while black's going to get some territory in the upper right, it's going to be enough if white captures this black group in the lower right. So that's white's game plan. So black is not going to finish the ko yet. And they're playing the moves, the local moves, while fighting the ko. They're using them as ko threats. But this is I guess it's the 4th ko. Yeah, something like that. I counted it very carefully when I studied the game, actually, but I'm getting a bit careless in this review. It is a big ko in the lower right. And black still has ko threats against that white group.
Yep.
And white takes the ko. Black gets to win the ko. And this is an interesting move where you would expect black to take the stone, but actually, as far as territory is concerned, this is just leaving this point open. That's 1 extra point of black territory. And also the fact that black can push through here. It's a couple of points better. But it's going to have something to do with a brilliant move that Sakata plays later in the game.
Okay.
It's going to be interesting. So white takes here. And white is still alive in the center. And this move, yeah. I could have asked you where white's ko threat is, but you wouldn't. I doubt you would find this move anyway. It's not a ko threat. It's not forcing. It's a really weird move, and it's brilliant. Okay, so just to look at the position as it is now, white doesn't have any ko threats. It's 0 ko threats for white. Black actually when black, let's see. So white doesn't have any co-threat. I think I had one. Like there's this co-threat. Yeah, there's this co-threat. I think black actually still had a co-threat somewhere.
It's hard to see where.
Well, black could play here. I think the trade I was looking at was this one, where black clips off these stones. I didn't leave a variation. There's that co-threat that black has. So maybe that's what or maybe actually, yeah. What I should say is maybe this is not forcing. Black would probably start by taking the co, just because black does have plenty of co-threats in areas like threatening to capture these two stones or making an eye. I guess black would not answer that co-threat. I think that's the correct answer. So white doesn't have any co-threats. So what's this move? This move is actually creating a co-threat because the co is not direct yet. It's not a direct co. He's creating a co-threat at playing on target against these stones. And he's erased all of those co-threats that black had against white. So for instance, black had this co-threat that was threatening to play here next. And then when white lives here, black would have this move to capture that group of stones there, those white stones in the upper left. So there was this issue that white had to deal with. Actually, by playing this move here, white has nullified that. Because when black plays this move and white answers it, like this, that's creating a throw-in here, which is going to end up with white capturing these three stones. So for instance, something like this. Which would, of course, be a disaster for black.
Oh, wow.
And although black is probably going to just sacrifice those 5 stones, that means black is going to run out of co-threats because that white group in the center is going to be alive. So that's the big difference. So just to go back again.
You all saw that, right? That's just people had figured out, like I had, that the purpose of N7 was to set up the threat, but we didn't. I'm sure.
Like, so even in the case where black plays this sequence of 3 moves to capture those stones, and white, well, in the meantime, white has just played the 1 move here. Even in this sequence, you can see it's going to connect up to white capturing those black stones the same way, just like I was showing you. So when black captures these stones on the left, white can actually throw in here and get these 3 stones. So that's all depending on this move. So it's not only slowing down black's potential attack with co-threats against white's group on the left, it's also creating 1 or 2 co-threats in the lower right area. It's a kind of a double, triple purpose move there, which looks really weird. It looks like a wasted move almost.
It so does.
But it's actually one of the most important moves in this game. And even professionals would usually not find that. Like I would be at a loss to find a way to win this ko at this point, even though white is supposedly at an advantage at this point in the ko. White doesn't have any co-threats. It means that black will be taking this ko 1 by 1. White doesn't have any good co-threats to counter that.
And this has to have been, you probably wouldn't necessarily know about the timing, but just given.
Well, back in 1951, they did have a lot of time.
Yeah.
I don't really know how much of it that they had used.
But this would have been after hours of play, I'm thinking.
It would have been after a full day, maybe more than 1 day. I'm not sure how it was set up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, if it was on day 2, maybe he had time to think it up.
He was great at reading out positions.
Wow.
But I think very few players, even at the top of the Go world, would find this move. It's like one of those moves you should see in history. but it was
Mm-hmm.
sort of it was just the Hoimbo title thing that was happening at the same time, which was such bigger
Oh,
news. People
that's
didn't
right.
really notice this game so much. So it was a hidden masterpiece, if you ask me.
Well, and as you were saying, and this bears repeating, Michael, is that this is the guy who'd gone up 3-1 in that same Hanimbo. And I'm going to say it was because of moves like this. Now, he had a little, problem closing that,
Mhm.
that year. But I mean, anybody who could come up with a move like this in,
Mhm.
he's going to be Hanimbo sooner or later.
Right. Well, he's so far back in history that some people might not even know who he is, but he for a long time he had the record for the number of titles he took. So it's like it was something like 63, I think, of
Mm-hmm.
official titles. And he had it for a long time until Chotsukun finally surpassed that.
Wow.
So he was one of the greatest players of the 20th century
Mm-hmm.
period.
I'm really, really happy to see this. That's a beautiful, beautiful move. It's the kind of move that you see now. You'd think it was just a mistake.
So now Black, and the fact is that because of that, because of this sort of quasi sente move that White has here, Black is completely out of ko threats suddenly. When you thought that Black was going to win that ko in the upper right, suddenly, just because of this one move here, Black has a hopeless position. Black doesn't have any ko threats.
Wow.
And so Black played this one. This is the only ko threat that Black has left. And White ignores it and finishes the ko. So Black is a bit behind in territory after this. For instance, Black could add a stone to the lower left corner, the lower right corner. That's going to be the next ko, the lower right corner. Let's see what's the count? One at K18 and the ko in the upper right corner, and the ko on the left. That's 3, and then there's this ko where Black connected his group, so that's 4. I guess that the lower right corner is going to be the 5th ko. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah.
The fifth,
But
yeah.
if Black had played here, it would be dead. But then White would just have a slight lead in territory. It would be good enough for White. Let's see if I didn't even leave a comment. It's going to be a win for White. White's going to be head on the board, actually, I think, before Comey. So Black plays this move at F18. And of course, you remember what the meaning of that move is. He's setting up that's going to be the 6th ko. So White plays here. There's going to be a ko in this corner. White can make a ko out of it. So there's this ko, and White plays the ko threat in the lower left, and Black finishes the ko. So there was this trade. Locally, this trade, this Black could have captured this corner. So if Black had added that stone, the lower left corner would have been Black's territory also. So the trade of this territory in the lower left, in which Black played this move on the upper side, this move at F18, that trade was bad for Black. Black had to win the ko on the lower right. And as a result of Black playing that marked move at F18, White got this territory in the corner. White took away the lower left corner. So that, up to this point, White is gaining points. But now Black is going to take that corner back.
So just to be clear to folks, so that White group in the lower right, that's I think something like around 30 points, right?
More than 30 points.
More than 30 points.
Mm-hmm. So Black has something like 50 points in that general area, I think.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. And then Black has about more than 10 points on the left side. This Black group in the upper right has 30 points just in the Black stones themselves.
Hmm.
So that's more than 50 points in itself. So if White has this group also, it's going to be a big win for White. But if Black can save that group, it's a bit less clear who's winning.
Hmm.
Because if we say that this territory is comparable to this Black territory, then this territory is actually pretty big. So it would be a fairly close game if Black saves those stones on the upper side. Now, how would you play the ko here? Black has just started a ko at H19.
I was just trying to figure that out.
That's ko number 6.
Yeah, that's one of our viewers just said my brain hurts. I'm feeling that. That's I mean the G just G I just try to think do you G19 or do you just go ahead and do the direct
E19 is
one
the normal move. The problem with
normal?
this move is that when black wins this call, black's going to capture that white stone and a
That's
lot of
right.
territory for black.
That's right.
It's going to be
That's right.
painful. So
Just do the direct
um,
one at K.
the usual way for white to play the ko would to just take this ko. But Sakata found a better way to do it. The fact that, again, this is a position where white is going to be short of ko threats. Black's ko threats are going to be against this group. If white answers the ko threats that black plays against this group in the lower left corner, then white will not be able to win that ko on the upper side.
Mm-hmm.
So white has to sacrifice the lower left corner now. And he's going to find the best way to do it by playing here first. Kind of a counterintuitive move. By making this ko that more serious. And you can see in this ko, when white loses the ko, all of white's stones are connected. So white's not losing any points when white loses this ko. That's the important point. In that other ko, where white plays here, white loses a lot of points.
That's right.
When white loses the ko. So white doesn't want to do it that way. In this case, black would play a ko threat here and take back. And white would be liable to, white doesn't have any good ko threats really. Like white doesn't want to play these ko threats in the center of the board yet because they're bad moves.
That's almost, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that connecting almost feels like an AlphaGo move where he's really making the calculations. He's really counting it out
He's
now.
still calculating, and it's a kind of a counterintuitive move, really.
Mm.
And you can see for one thing, he's not going to lose any points when he loses the ko. So it's a lighter ko than before.
Right,
and he's also created this potential ko threat at this point. So in some cases, he's going to be able to play that ko threat. All of these ko threats, just the fact that white, any move that white chooses, the fact that all of white's stones are connected will make them valid ko threats if the time comes. And so black, let's see, the game, black plays the ko threat, and it takes one extra move for white to win the ko, but there's nowhere useful for white to play elsewhere anyway. So this is really very valuable for white to get the best result up there on the upper side.
That is
so much better.
That's really valuable. That's I'm trying to count how many points, but that's a huge number of points. You've got the captures, you've got the connecting out.
Like if white had fought this ko in any normal fashion, it wouldn't have been close to this much.
Yeah.
And so it was a very counterintuitive move that he played, but extremely successful when you see this final result here, where white has captured all of those black stones, and also has this. This is pretty close to the biggest move on the board. So it's going to be white's going to get a tempo out of it too.
Show for it probably comes up in the game, but this is huge. This next move.
We still have one more ko to go. So this is the Tetsuji white plays here, and yeah, black gets into all kinds of trouble if black tries to do this. White would get, that would be similar to what happened later in the game anyway. So I'll show you that variation. And if black plays here, white gets the double attachment.
Oh, sweet. Yeah.
So in the game, black played here, white played here. And this is a point where, like, if black was winning, black would not play that move, but would play something like this and kill the corner. But then white would just take this big point, and white would be ahead before Komi. So black is inviting the final ko. White plays here, and the way he executes it again is just beautiful. White has a forcing move here. White has a forcing move here. So like a mediocre player would play here, and then would play here, and then would play here. This is going to be a ko anyway, because if white connects at this point, it's just going to be a dead shape. That's dead. 3 stones.
Right.
So white has to play a ko here. This is the wrong way to make a ko, because black takes first. So let's see how Sakata made the ko in the game. Let's see, where am I? He played this one. If black cuts, then white gets to play this one and capture the 4 stones. This is another beautiful move that Sakata played.
That is lovely.
He can still play here. The same problem, it's going to be black taking the ko first. So he doesn't play that move. He doesn't need to play that move. He plays here immediately. If black cuts here, white can just cut back. So black plays the cut here. White still cannot connect. If white connects, it's just a dead shape. So white bumps against, and he plays this move finally. He plays it last because it's always forcing, and he gets to take the ko first. So that's the one ko threat difference is pretty important in this game when they're both running out of ko threats.
Man, black has got to be just feeling so frustrated. It's like things just won't stay dead.
They won't stay dead. And white has this ko threat.
I mean, hold on, but just to refresh people's memory, right? White traded the left-hand corner for that little business on the upper side.
Mm-hmm.
And now white has resurrected the left-hand corner.
Mm-hmm. Right. So everything is going
a little bit of a fake
of all these
there.
groups. They're going back and forth. Like black played a move in this area, allowing white to make this happen. And because of this ko here, they're all interacting. And just like this ko that they were playing here, which was something like 4 stages, going back and forth, and it was always interacting with the rest of the board. It's right. A very exciting and complicated position. And the status of everything changes so much. Now this move is threatening to, if white plays here, black can play here, white lives, and black can clip off those stones. So it's the same problem as what I was talking about before, because white fills the liberty here and throws in here, and black cannot save those 5 stones. So white chose the simple way to finish that off. And black is going to lose those 5 stones, right? Before finishing the ko, he chose to play an Atari here. And we're going to see the final touch here. If white takes the ko, black will be able to connect here. Let's see. Black can take here as a ko threat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And white will have to take this, and black can take back the ko. So that was the idea that black had. So white took first. If black takes here, now black doesn't have that ko threat because white's played it first. So it's a position where you would expect white to answer here, but that would actually lose a point because it's inside white's territory. So the fact that he played this move, inviting black to, this would be difficult for black because white takes the ko first. He plays this move, and black was running out of ko threats. Black had to finish the ko. Now white gets to finish this way, avoiding putting the stone inside his territory. He didn't have to do that to win the game, but I find this a finishing touch here.
That's clever.
It gains an extra point. And at this point, black resigned.
Yeah.
308 moves.
It's like, fine.
Yeah. This is sort of vintage Sakata, and it's what I love about his game is that there's so much happening in it.
Yes.
And the more I study it, the more I'm impressed by the depth of his reading.
Well, and as you said at the beginning, Michael, and I'm so glad, I love, like you, to look at these historical games. I'm really happy. We did that whole series of the, hundreds of year old games. I'm really happy. I think a lot of the games in the 40s, 50s, even the 60s kind of get ignored. Mm-hmm. Some of the games in the 30s get looked at, but I think a lot of these games in the 40s and 50s are really interesting. Like you were saying, there's that move earlier that really should be a classic move. And also, as you pointed out, this has a lot to say to us today. I mean, the way Sakata was calculating felt very AlphaGo-ish to me. I mean, I really felt like he knew he had the game, mm-hmm. And it looked to me like he had a couple of ways to win it, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think actually, I just saw the question from the chat. it is true that the fact that these players had longer time controls, they had more
Yes.
time at
Yes.
hand, they were able to add some depth to the reading. And so that's a reading precision of and depth of reading, which was not only unique to Sakata, but it was also enabled by the fact that he had a large amount of time, much more time than modern professionals have to play their games.
Mm-hmm.
So like even at this, nowadays there's still 3 titles in Japan that are played in which one game is played over the period of 2 days, something
Mm-hmm.
like 8 or 9 hours, depending on which tournament it is. But that was just pretty normal. Like even at the round robin league stage, to choose the challenger for a tournament, they would play some of the games over 2 days. So they had a lot of time at their disposal, and they were more accustomed to spending that time to read out all of the variations. So I think there is some approximation, maybe in some cases less accurate reading by the top pros nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
At the very, very top, there are some players who are, of course, very precise. But I think that in general, you see a lot of precise reading in these games.
Well, and I think another thing too is that let's not forget. I mean, think about that. You know, a game. Yeah, sure, you had longer back then, but that also brings in another factor, which is, you know, imagine having to play a game over, you know, how many hours is it? That's a long time to
Very,
be
very tiring.
playing
Yes. Mm-hmm.
mentally. I just think that's got to be a whole other level. And as we were talking about earlier, some of these moves were coming in after what must have been hours and hours of play.
Definitely so. Yes.
We've only been looking at this game for, barely an hour, and people's heads were exploding.
Mm-hmm.
So good question here about whether we'll see any of these long time settings again. I can't imagine that we would ever go back to those, right? A pro level, right?
Well, yeah, the sponsors really enjoy better the quick games. They're more
Right.
exciting because things happen. And I think, yeah, I don't know. Some of the players at the top have often, like people like Lisa Law, I think, and some of the top players historically have always wanted to try out the longer time controls. Like in China and Korea, they never really had them. And so you see a lot of the top Chinese and Korean players, some of them saying that they wish they could play longer time controls. But I think that it's just that as something for people to watch, like nowadays you watch these games real time sometimes and stuff like that. It'd be the people watching wouldn't be able to keep up to that. Like they wouldn't
Right.
be ready to watch one game going on for several days or something like that.
Yeah, I think the time. I think the answer to that is really just that. I mean, I know that, and I don't watch cricket, but I know that they've had to look at changing the cricket format. They've got a fast cricket format for basically for the same reason that the modern audiences are just not going to watch something that goes over. So,
people's lives have speeding up so much.
right. Another question before we go. I think this is a good question, although I think it'll be an interesting answer, which has to do with whether today's top professionals, play at this level. And I think that's a bit of a complicated answer, right?
I actually I saw that. I was sort of trying to answer that when I was talking about how they had longer time to be able to read out all of these variations. But of course so if we're looking at the middle game, I think that these players and the players from previous hundreds of years, like the golden age of Japanese Go, when they had plenty of time to play. In the serious games, they would play for longer time periods, and they didn't even have any clocks back then. They didn't have to abide by time limits.
Mm-hmm.
So their games would go on the important games would go on for a long time. So yeah, that does make a difference in the quality of the reading, of the calculation towards the end of the game. But of course, modern pros with AIs, I think the level of play has dramatically improved in the last few years, just because we have AIs to help us. Like it's not I would caution against just copying what the AI suggests.
Right.
But the way top professionals are using them, they're improvising and using the AIs to check what they want to do. So
Right.
they're getting scores from the AIs, but they still have to get, in order to improve, they have to get the ideas themselves, hopefully. And I think we still see that at the top levels. And the fact that they can trust the score given by an AI really speeds up the process of researching new ways to play.
And I think that one of the things, and one of the fun things about looking at all of these games over these hundreds of years is that, it's the same game. And that's the beauty of Go is, we have the same game. We have these different players. We have different game theory. And, now we have AIs, which obviously, as you were just saying, is pushing it to new levels, but it's the same game. And it really, I think this is what makes
it's really
it so
fun to see some of those moves that sort of died out at some point coming back now, because they get good scores with the AI sometimes and stuff like that. And some of those ancient players had it right to start with. Yeah, it's interesting to see that happen.
That makes you happy as a Go historian, doesn't it?
Right.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think it's a great, I'm really happy, and I hope we'll be looking at more of these, especially these sort of hidden gems that maybe people either never saw, didn't get enough attention. Certainly, in the West, but to bring those out. And folks, we're going to be skipping next week. Folks should have a nice, I know, socially distanced and all that with the holidays, but we'll be back in a couple of weeks. I think we're going to do another AlphaGo game. And I think Michael's been playing some games. So we'll probably get to see some Michael games. But I'm really excited to be delving into these different areas. And maybe next time what we'll do is Michael will give some different options and you all can vote. So it'll be a viewer choice kind of a situation. So hope you enjoyed that. There was a question. Just a reminder that these games do get posted the following Friday. So this game will be posted on our YouTube channel Friday, Black Friday, actually. So
Friday.
You can check that out. Just a reminder that, of course, we have our ongoing AlphaGo versus the World Series, which is coming into, I believe it's last month, as we wrap that series up.
There's still some games left in that, actually.
There are some games left. And also be sure to check out Michael's relatively new YouTube channel. He's got lots of really cool stuff there. And of course, usgo.org. Lots of amazing stuff there as well. Thanks to Eva-Dee, who produced for us today. Appreciate that. And we will, everybody stay safe out there. Michael, as always, thank you for exploding all of our heads. No, but seriously, making a very complicated game pretty accessible to us. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for watching. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.